welcome to the Death of a Dream podcast with your host, Hannah Ness. We are on part 2 of this story. So first, we're going to ground ourselves in our greatness. If you want more detail about what that is, how and why I adopt that into our daily practice, what it is and how it got started, I wrote a blog on that yesterday. You can find that at nessinc.com/blog. And it's just titled Greatness Grounding, something like that. I think I used something a little more fetched than that, but that's where you can find the background on greatness grounding and why we start every day here with it. So my great thing from yesterday is this idea, and I've talked about this before, but this idea of the ripple effect and how you don't know how you standing up for something, me going on this journey of living life on my terms and changing my life to live according to things I wanted, you don't know how that's going to impact people around you. And the funniest thing is, for the longest time, I was just like, oh, we just need different friends. Nobody's about the same things. I don't believe that that's true. I think so many of us are just hiding in the impossibility of it all. And so the amazing thing to me has been seeing the ripple effect of my one choice impacting and empowering other people to make their choice, right? To stand up for things they want and believe in. And that's been the most amazing part. And I think so many times we spend so much time, we invest so much of our time, energy, voice, spirit to speak to the reasons we can't do something instead of putting all of our energy into figuring out how we can. And I've seen this ripple effect. I've seen so many people around me in my network start deciding the same thing I did, which is why it's imperative for this story to be told. Here I sit in the middle of pretty much nowhere, talking about this story of having nothing and yet everything, and no real reason to change my life because it would have been fine. And yet striving and grasping and wanting more and wanting impossible things that just burned in the back of my mind and in my soul. In fact, literally created nightmares in my subconscious around not using my voice for these things, literally created sign after sign after sign that this is where I was supposed to be, that this is what I was supposed to be doing. And I think so many times we get lost in this idea of metrics and understanding of what success is or isn't. And it doesn't have to be like that. If you have energy from something, you can change your entire life to do that. I woke up 6 years ago and said, I want more, I want better, and I want to decide. And every day since that decision has led to my ability to make this huge decision and commitment in my life to my life. And people around you see that, they feel that, and they know that that's what they should be doing too. And I think the harder thing is a majority of people will be impacted by the ripple effect of you making that one decision, because you make that decision, you draw that line in the sand, leads to other people drawing their line in the sand, believing that they are worth it, believing that their dreams have truth and need and responsibility in this world, believing that they are put here for a reason, draws another line, draws another line, draws another line. And honestly, I just wanted to be that person for one person. I wanted to be that person that I needed when I was going through this all by myself. And so if that's where my voice can come in, if that's what this is helping you, then the ripple effect of this has amazed me so far, and it amazes me even more to see it playing out in and around the people that I didn't believe were those people. But sometimes all they need is someone willing to do it first, to inspire that action, to inspire that movement, to go, right? Sometimes that's all that they need. And that's all that I needed, right? And I had to look to other sources to get that. But if you want to plant your flag somewhere, be super conscious of the fact that people will follow. It's a beautiful thing. The ripple effect, you don't know how far that goes out. You don't know how many lives you impact because of your willingness to show up for yourself. And so that's been my great thing. I will say on the flip side of that, there are going to be people who are super offended, super intimidated by you doing this, and that's their choice, but it does not have to stop you. Okay? Don't let that one person stop you, because this is what I can promise you. For that one person, for every one person who wants to stop you, there are going to be 10 people who need you to do that. And I want you to keep moving for those 10 people, even though you don't know who they are yet, right? Even though you don't know how you've impacted them yet, even though you're solely doing this for yourself, there will be 10 people, if not more, who are impacted positively by your ripple effect. And so I want you to keep going, keep showing up, keep signing up to live life on your terms, to do the things in your heart and in your head, to bring them to life in this world. There is room for you, there is room for you, there is room for you. Go do it. Period. And there are always going to be a million reasons why you shouldn't. But I need you to focus on the one reason you should. And this morning I can tell you my one reason to start was just me and just my energy. And now my 60 reasons to keep going are what I'm seeing unfold right in front of my face. Is the fact that your story has value, that you are a person that people can find themselves so beautifully placed exactly where you're at in your story, and that's why it's important to tell it. Right? And I thought for the longest time, in fact, I would speak to the fact that I really have no worth in this world. I really have no significance to my story. And a lot of times, if that's where you're coming from, you just haven't found it yet. Right? I didn't want to dig deep in and find my story because it seemed like it was going to be painful, and quite frankly it was a lot easier to just try to speak to the things I already knew about myself, that I'm an ever optimist, that I love finding ways to make things happen even though it seems impossible. You know, like I wanted to speak and do things around that, but I couldn't have gotten where I am now if I wasn't willing to go back and discover where these things came from. And so sometimes I think we avoid that pain. We avoid that truth because we don't think that we'll recover from it. But as someone who has, it's worth going there because it's going to come back up. That's all I can promise you right now. It's going to come back up, and it's going to come up big and scary. And the fact of the matter is, if you don't deal with it, if you just keep hiding it, if you just keep covering it up, that insecurity, that truth is going to keep you holding back from showing up as your true self. So I want you to be willing to go in and investigate your own story, to really figure out what it's going to take for you to show up for you, for the things that you want to do, for this world in the way that you envision it, like no one else. That's what I want for you, right? And then sit back and watch the ripple effect. I was constantly looking for people who looked like the people that I wanted to be surrounded by, and I was already surrounded by them. They just didn't know what was possible, right? So, keep going. You don't know. You don't know, and you won't know. And if you stop because there aren't enough people, because there's not enough analytics and data pushing you towards continuing, you're never going to know. Just keep going. You'll find it. You'll find those people. Look, you found me. We found each other. Here we are. Right? You'll find them. Keep going. And enjoy the ripple effect after. It's a beautiful thing. So that's my great thing today. I challenge you to take time for your own greatness, to recognize yourself, and just sit back and appreciate how wonderfully made you are. Okay? All right, let's dive in. We're on part 2. I think we left off with my heart problems and me and my significant other sitting down and having this conversation. Hey, what's it going to take to go do this? And that would have been around January of this year. Now, that's my biggest piece of advice. Sit down and have that conversation. If you're doing life with someone else, have that conversation prior to just losing your mind and needing to get out, right? Have it, because if you're asking for signs, you're likely going to get them. And when you do, I want you to be prepared, fully prepared to move on those signs. And I've done it both ways. I learned from the first time that I was being handed signs where it just got so painful and crazy and terrible that all of a sudden I just had to go all in and make this decision, and I don't know that I did it right. And I wish that I had planned and prepared for it a little bit better. And so having learned from that experience, I decided that the second that I wanted to start asking for a sign to go one direction or the other, I needed to be prepared to be delivered that sign, right? So if that sign is like, hey, I just need a sign that I need to leave this job, that I need to go do this thing, right? That I need to go do this workout, I want you to start planning for what that's going to look like. Okay, so if it's like joining a gym and this gym is super expensive, start figuring out what your life is going to look like if you go do that, before you go do that, right? Ask for the sign, start preparing your life and looking for the sign. And it's okay that you don't act on the first one that you're given. It's okay if you keep questioning the world. I'm going to talk through that today. It's okay to keep questioning it as long as you're preparing along the way. So if you're saving the money for the down payment in the gym and you just keep being given these signs, that's beautiful, right? It's strengthening this belief that you have that this is the route you're supposed to go. And so on the other side of that, we need to not only ask, but also take action. And so the action piece of that decision of wanting to take that sign, of wanting to make that move, is planning for that move. Right? So that's what I want you to start doing. If you're going to ask for a sign, you'll be given one by the universe, by God, by whatever that is for you. You'll be probably given one. And so I need you to take action and start preparing for that. Okay? So we started. We took the action. We had the conversations. It was hard. It was annoying. I'm certain that my significant other was like, oh no, this is gonna be terrible, but I know that this is what she wants to do. And I really just appreciate her not just losing her mind and making this decision. We made it together. It's important that you make decisions with whoever you're doing life with. Okay, because there are going to likely be some sacrifices that you're going to have to make as a result, and you want to both confidently go in that direction. Can't just be a singular event if you're doing life together. When you act in a singular manner in this way, it hurts your ability to support one another. So we had the conversations, we did the things, and I say, okay, well, the heart thing, that could still just be my body. I'm going to need something a little more specific. So shortly after that, I don't know if you're living in this world right now, shortly after that, COVID-19 would hit. And I previously worked in healthcare, and so you can imagine how this changed my world, right? And that was like such a huge sign of, and okay, no, if you're rolling your eyes and you're going, really, a national pandemic was your sign? Okay. But really, the timing of it, and I realized it wasn't my sign, it wasn't just my sign, right? Like, this is a thing. It's not just me. I know. I haven't gone that crazy yet. But it was just another thing. And it was that thing led to probably about 3 events that I don't know would have happened had the pandemic not happened, right? And so that happened. That drastically changed our world. Myself and my husband were both finding ourselves essential. We're both finding our daycares just closed and not really having any ability to find childcare. Now we were lucky enough to have my mom step in and help out. But it just made me really question if this was possible. It gave me time and ability to dig even deeper in my own work. So I really got into Enneagram, and I really got into this discovery of self. And I don't know if the pandemic hadn't happened, would I have given myself enough time and silence to dig into that work? Probably not. And that work really saved me. And so another thing happened. I have been saying, like, I want to be around authors because I want to write and I want to do things like that. And so also with that pandemic, I get chosen to be on a launch team for a book, Jen Hatmaker's book. And I talk about that in the podcast. You can probably find it. It's around this timeline. And I am reading this book, and it's called Fierce, Free, and Full of Fire. If you haven't bought it yet, you should. It's a blessing to this world. And so in that group, I start reading the book and I start to question, like, why I haven't been showing up fully as myself. Like, I've been kind of hiding this person. And so in that book, she's talking about, like, being you and discovering yourself. And at the same time, I start reading Glennon Doyle's Untamed. And in that book, she's talking about similar things, but really this self-discovery of who you're meant to show up in this world as. And in one of the chapters, Jen Hatmaker in Fierce, Free, and Full of Fire talks about her daughter, who's an Enneagram 7, who talks about, and this was a huge sign for me, because what are the chances that I'm reading this book at all? And I got to read it early because I was on the launch team. And I don't know that had it not been the pandemic that I would have dove all the way in. And I do know that if I hadn't been on that launch team, I probably wouldn't have bought that book early. I'm sure that I would have bought it later, but I definitely wouldn't have bought it in the pre-order, and I definitely wouldn't have, and I also got the advanced copy, so I actually got it about 4 weeks before anyone else. And so all of these things led to this perfect timing of me really starting to question what I'm doing and how I got here. And why? And on a deeper level, because really the last year had already been that discovery, but this last 6 months really has been digging in deep to like, do you even want to do this? Why do you want to do this? What is this for you? And are you even cut out to do this work? And so I question that. I'm still asking for signs. COVID happens. The next sign is that I get chosen for this launch team. The next sign is that I open up to this chapter. And she starts talking about her daughter, who's an Enneagram 7, which so am I. If you haven't found your Enneagram yet, do yourself a favor, start following Enneagram and Coffee, and then buy Sarah Jane Case's book, because I think it's the most realistic and applicable breakdown of the Enneagram that you could have. Okay. PSA. This is not sponsored, but it should be. Love you. Okay. So she starts talking about her daughter who's an Enneagram 7. And her daughter says this one thing and it just completely floors me. And she says, Mom, and gosh, I wish that I could read the passage, but my book is still loaned out to someone. Okay. She says, Mom, my biggest fear is that I do all of this work to go to school, to figure this out, and I still end up in a cubicle. That's my biggest fear. And when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh. That's my biggest fear. And here I sit, surrounded by walls, surrounded by the very cubicle that she's talking about fearing so much. Oh my gosh. What am I doing? How did I get here? Why am I here? I don't want that. I don't want that structure. I don't want that suffocation. I don't want that. And so that sign was just like, whoa. Okay. Then I have that realization. I say it on this podcast, probably stupidly, but I'm just like, man. And you know what? I don't think it was stupid, because here's the thing. I had been saying that for a while. Like, if we're going to keep doing this, like, let's get creative with this space. Let's mix it up. Let's make it a better environment for creation, for the expansion of our minds. And I think the reality is I wanted to fit my 7-ness in a world that doesn't want it or isn't ready for it yet. And that's okay, right? But I can't keep trying to fit myself into that world. And I think there was a constant struggle of me trying to force my way and my being into a place where it's never going to fit. And so I have that realization. I say the things. I'm probably about a month later called in and given the biggest sign that this isn't right for me, that we got to keep moving, and now you have to make a choice. And so I made my choice. I decide that that's not going to be the space for me, that I don't fit there. And no matter what I do, I'm never going to fit there. And I don't know that I want to. I don't know that I want to keep changing who I'm called to be in this world to fit somewhere. And so I decide right then and there that, I decide that I'm going to start really looking at this. We've been planning for this. I really figured that we'd be exiting around fall, but let's go. Now's the time. I've been asking for signs. I've been given signs. And about the day after I'm told that we have to delete the podcast and undo all of this work in order to stay here, my neck just tenses up like nothing I've ever felt. I've never had neck or back problems ever in my life, and my whole body just feels like it's seizing, right? And there's just this general discomfort. And so I go to the chiropractor, and they're like, everything's pretty much in line. It's just we'll get you straightened out. There's not much off, but we'll fix it, right? And this seizing, like I can't undo it. And I'm given this message, and I kind of flirt with this idea of like, okay, and Jordan and I have conversations, and we're talking about what this is going to look like. If this is what we do, are we even ready for this? Can we go here? And we decide, yup. And for a month, I'm kind of toying with this. Like, no, I probably should just delete it. It's crazy. Just take it down. It's not even that big a deal. Like, no one really even knows that this exists. Just get rid of it. Just stop doing it. Just recommit to this. This is crazy. You can't do this. Stop. And I think the tension came from me trying to convince myself that this is where I was supposed to be and that I needed to give up on this. And every time that I would dig into that deeper, the tension would grow. And everything's just seized up, and I can't even move, and I'm in so much pain, and I know that it's just from this general discomfort, and this was the final sign. And I'm like, you know what? This is just my body. It's reacting to this discomfort. It's trying to tell me, no, it's not meant to happen. You got to get out, and you got to figure it out. And so, oh my gosh. And there have been so many other signs. And so right around that time, I started asking God, like, okay, fine, I hear you, but I'm going to need money. I'm going to need support to go do this. And oh my gosh. Oh, we're going to have to go to part 3. I can't really wrap right here. So I'm going to keep going on the neck. And there were other signs, and I'll get into that on Monday. You'll have to come back. I'm sorry. This isn't even like a keep following me, follow to the next episode. This literally is like, I want to go into the depth of the other signs that happened within this month. And I want to really be able to tell you that story. So my neck just seizes for months straight as I'm toying with this idea. And literally the day that I submit my resignation, it goes away. My neck completely relaxes. And yes, I was doing chiropractic work, but gone. Never happened again. And it was truly just the discomfort of that moment. But how many times are your bodies trying to protect you from situations? And that's what I loved about Jen Hatmaker's book too, is like, she talks about that, about how your body is such a gift to your knowing. And we fight that. And we're told our whole lives that, like, no, don't trust her. It doesn't know. Trust the system. Trust these things. But your body is built to protect you from situations not meant for you. And if this story right here, these last 2 days, hasn't been proof of that, I don't know what is. And so the day that I submit my resignation, all that tension just drops. And I keep waiting, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I keep waiting for this uncomfortable feeling of like, you're about to dive in and completely change your life and go down this direction. And it never happened. And I'm still waiting. Like, oh no, it's going to hit you. It's going to hit you. And it never came, because this is exactly what I've been asking for. This is the life that I want. I want to sit and create, and I want to sit and do things. And I know that I'm not going to give up on that dream and that goal, and I'm going to keep fighting for it, because this is what I want. And this story is proof for all of you that those dreams that you have, there's worth there. You can. And you can out hustle and you can go do those things. Okay? You just got to keep showing up for you. As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? No! Sorry, I got cut off. Okay. As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? Change the world. Oh, shoot. There's the podcast.